very soon.
Oh, hey, we're live. How is everyone? Today will be an historic day if a jury comes back with a verdict in the Donald Trump case. You know, he is charged with 34 felonies right now in New York.
Just New York.
And if you followed this case at all, it's still unclear what crime has been committed here. This is a really interesting, I think today will, this isn't a political show and we'll move on here from just a second, but this is like a former president is about to be found guilty in order to influence an election. That's actually what's happening.
Is that what the odds are? Guilty?
I have no idea. How could it not be?
I don't know. I haven't been paying attention.
The judge gave the jury instructions that if just 4 of them thinks he's guilty on one charge, and another 4 thinks he's guilty on another charge, and another 4 thinks he's guilty on another charge, that will count as a unanimous verdict.
Interesting math.
When there's normally unanimous is all 12.
12 angry men?
So, I don't know. This is a really weird day. This is an historic day. This will be looked back on 100 years from now.
Yeah.
What's happening today.
And
for good or bad, I have no idea. Did he do? I have no idea.
And
but it's not clear what he did.
No. You'd have to ask ChatGPT a lot of repeat questions for it to do the analysis.
It's like they're saying he tried to influence an election. Well, yeah, he was a candidate for president. That's what candidates for president try to do. They try to influence an election.
Generally, yeah. And he's going to move on in about 10 nanoseconds. Once it's done.
Oh, by the way, if this was a plan by the Democratic Party and Joe Biden, conviction equals election for Donald Trump. That's another wild thing.
Little painted into
you convict him, guaranteed he wins. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Which again is just an odd thing to think about. He's got to be rooting for a conviction. How would he not be?
They're all pointing their guns at each other. It didn't go well.
That's odd. Very odd. Anyways, this isn't a political show, but that just happened right as we walked in. So the jury is deliberating. We may have the verdict while we're here, live.
We can break it.
We can break the news to the whole world.
First time.
All right, we have an incredible guest today, Alan Matheson, who is the executive director of the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority. He's overseeing the development of nearly 600 acres of state-owned property called the Point. This is the most important development probably in the history of the state, or one of them since the founding of the state. This is a pretty big deal. Alan, how are you feeling about the progress of this, and how do you think, are we going to pull this off?
We're going to pull it off. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate it. It's nice to have a chance to kind of give people an update on what's happening there. If you've driven by the site, you probably see that there's been some activity, and shortly we'll see a lot more. But yes, this is a big opportunity, and I don't think we fully realized how big an opportunity it was until we had people from outside the state who are coming in and see. You just don't get these kinds of situations where you've got 600 acres, blank canvas, served by great infrastructure, more infrastructure coming in, heart of Silicon Slopes, fast-growing metropolitan areas, beautiful views. It just doesn't happen. So we have not just an opportunity, but a real responsibility to take advantage of it and do it right.
Yeah.
So here's probably the most pressing question on everyone's minds. We currently have 3 professional sports teams.
4.
4.
Warriors.
Oh, rugby.
Jazz.
All right. Calm down. But the rugby too. So we have 4 professional sports teams. We have the Utah Jazz. We have unnamed hockey team. We have Real Salt Lake, and we have the Utah Warriors, Major League Rugby team, for those who don't know. And odds are we're going to get a Major League Baseball team within the next 10 years. What are the odds that all of them end up at the Point?
Almost zero. I'll tell you, I'm excited about it. I'm a big sports fan. I'm anxious to have Major League sports here in Utah. I think it'll be great for our community. That's probably not the focus of the point, and it looks like they've got homes elsewhere. And so,
what are the odds that one of them ends up at the point?
I'll just say there are no plans at this point for any major league teams to be at the point.
Okay. So what is the plan for the point?
This is going to be Utah's innovation community. We think because it's state-owned, meaning all of us, that we own it, that we've got a responsibility to make sure that it's providing a benefit to people, a benefit in terms of quality of life as well as economic return. So the plan is this is going to be an innovation community, meaning we're going to do things in a little different way, and I'll explain that. First of all, I think we're all concerned about growth, what it does to our quality of life, our ability to get to the canyons and find some solitude, the traffic, air quality, water, all of those things. So we're really thinking about this as a model for development. We don't want to stop growth. We can't stop growth, but we can accommodate it in more thoughtful ways that use less water, that generate less traffic, and we can talk about some of those strategies. But there's also a real interest in having a place that advances Utah's economic interests. So it means focusing on some of those target industries that are important for the future of the state, but also solving some of our problems, energy, healthcare, those kinds of things. So this will be a place where industry and academia will come together. We'll have great minds, research, nurture that research to commercialization, and hope spur the economy as well as address some of these challenges.
Very cool. We had you on Friday Conversations a couple of years ago, and you immediately shot down the idea of turning it into a duck hunting reserve, right? Which was my idea.
Well, I've been thinking about it a lot more since, and maybe we'll change our mind.
Your job is really cool and fun and unique, but you're going to hear a lot of unsolicited opinions. You have and will into the future. How have you guys corralled and handled the public versus what needs to be done and what you know needs to be done? Because it is everyone's project, I suppose, in some form or fashion.
You know, shockingly, not everybody has the same idea about what ought to happen here. It's stunning, but we recognize that this isn't our project. It's our project more broadly, people of the state. So there was an effort before the authority was created where about 5,000 people talked about what should happen in the Point of the Mountain region. Since then, we've involved 16,000 people in providing input on design, priorities, the kinds of things they want to see there. That's been key. And in fact, the first thing we did when we had the planning team together was, let's go through what we've heard from the public. Let's make sure that we are turning their ideas into something that's happening on the ground, the plans on the ground. And that continues. And we welcome and appreciate that input. It's going to make it better. It doesn't mean that everybody's fully aligned, but we think that the plan that we're moving forward with is really in line with where the majority of people have been directing us.
So when you say it's going to be like the innovation, which is awesome, obviously we love to hear that. And it's right there in the heart of Silicon Slopes, right?
Right.
Which is incredible. So you should probably brand it, call it Silicon Slope City. Let's talk about that. But what does that mean exactly? Are we going to put like research universities in there? Are we going to have tech companies in there? Are we going to have housing in there? What does it mean for this to be like the innovation district?
So we're working very closely with the Utah System of Higher Education. Jefferson Moss is the Associate Commissioner for Innovation and doing a lot of work in terms of the programming, creating the ecosystem that really is going to drive the success here. But there are a number of elements that you need to be successful as an innovation district. One of those is placemaking. It's got to be a kind of place where people want to be, where talent will be attracted. And so that means a range of housing types. It means recreational opportunities. It means restaurants and places to gather. So, number one, placemaking. In addition to that, you need resources. places where people can access venture capital, mentoring, where the universities have a presence. And that'll be the case here. In fact, we think that the first building, or at least one of the first buildings, will be what we call Convergence Hall, which is a place where all of Utah's institutions of higher learning can have a home. There will be makerspace in the area, assembly halls, offices, housing for post-grad students so we can attract some of the best minds in the world to this area. And we think that'll be kind of the heart of the Innovation District, not the Innovation District, just the first piece of it. And then around that, we're working with our developers to attract life science companies, high-tech companies, et cetera. And so we think that those pieces working together, creating a place of collaboration, a term we use sometimes is bumpability, where you get people from different disciplines that run into each other intentionally or by happenstance, and share ideas and find innovation at the intersection of those disciplines. So programming is part of it, a place where people can come and talk about the work that they're doing, where they can go to a cafe and have a conversation with somebody that's working nearby. So all of those pieces have to work together to get to the ecosystem that creates this culture of creativity that's needed to advance the work.
How far along are we in this project?
So I think most people recognize that there have been a number of steps. There are a lot of things that kind of happen below the surface before you see a lot of activity above. So we've been through the planning process. We've put together the team. We brought in the development partners, which include Lincoln Property Company, a national, highly experienced group, and then some very competent and capable local developers, Wadsworth and Clemena. They said that the process that we went through was the most rigorous they've ever been through, by far. And it had to be. We had development teams from all over the country who were interested in this project, but it had to be a group that was capable, had the funding to make it happen, had a plan to ensure a return to the people of the state, and that cared about the state. We wanted them to care about the state as much as we did. So we've got the teams in place. We've got the development agreement. We've done the planning for the infrastructure. The infrastructure started. Some people may have seen some equipment out there. This summer,
That's
you'll
awesome.
see dirt turning with roads going in and the wet and dry utilities. And first land, I think, will be taken down probably toward the end of the year and start going vertical soon after that.
Very cool. I sit on an advisory committee, and it seems like there's some council folks and mayors from Draper, Riverton, surrounding areas. They obviously have a vested interest because it touches a few municipalities. And it was interesting even in that group, because they're fairly well educated on this. It's going to be a big part of their lives and their constituent lives. There's still a lot of questions, right? Because it's a big project. And then there were still a lot of opinions. It was fun to watch. It might not be fun for you guys anymore.
It's always fun.
Fly on the wall, it was fun. And it'll be a while before people start to see the vision, because some folks are just visually, you've got to see it to believe it. It just can't be on the map. But if you had a magic wand and you could fast forward, would you semi-accurately be able to say we're going to have X amount of life science buildings, we're going to have X amount of parks, we're going to have X amount of EV chargers? Is that coming into clarity yet?
Yeah, it is. And that's been part of the framework plan that's been out there for a couple of years. But we're going to be starting, not surprisingly, with phase one and doing it a little differently than a traditional development. Typically, you'd start on the edges where you have existing infrastructure. It's less expensive to build some housing, get some money, and then work toward commercial and office, et cetera. We think we need to start with the core. And so we're starting with the most intense part of the development, the most interesting part of the development. It's 100 acres right in the center. And the first piece that's going in is what we call the promenade, which is world-class Main Street with ground floor retail, restaurants. We've incentivized our developers to bring in restaurants and stores and other things we haven't seen in Utah before, as well as Utah companies. There will be residential and office above, an entertainment center for everything from concerts to esports, you name it. The River to Range Trail will go in along with the Central Park area. That River to Range Trail has me excited. It's connecting the Jordan River Parkway through this project to the regional trails east of I-15. It's going to be part of the largest regional trail system west of the Mississippi and a key connection that will help people recreate, but also commute by bike or e-bike or scooter or whatever it is. So I think that'll help keep people off the street. And I just get excited about this idea of you work in the morning, you go down at lunchtime, jump on your bike, go over I-15, do a couple of laps in corner canyons on the mountain bike, and then be back for an afternoon of work.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. You could fish. You could bird watch.
That's right.
It'd be a unique day.
That's right.
For sure. Back to opinions on things. There was a lot of folks that we sent your way to be on your one of those 16,000 person. And they'd been all over the world and they had really interesting ideas on skyscrapers, right? Or not skyscrapers, but maybe 25-story buildings because of growth, all the people that would need to be there. What's the tallest building going to be?
Have no idea. There's no cap on how tall the buildings can be, and I think we'd welcome some taller buildings. I would say the market's going to drive it. The building techniques get more expensive, get higher, but I'd love to see some height there. I think the constraint, as much as anything, is traffic. We don't want to put so much density in there that you create gridlock. And so we're doing traffic modeling throughout. Water is an issue. We need to make sure that we're being careful with the water that's available. So some of those are potential constraints, but no constraints on height, and we're encouraging kind of a variety of building types.
And the state will begin to sell this land, is that right?
I expect that'll happen over time. So
the state's not going to own the buildings.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I'll tell you the structure right now and the reason for it. The thought is that initially the state's going to maintain ownership of the land and enter into long-term ground leases with the developers. So 99 years. That's financeable these days. It's much more common. But the reason for that is that as long as the state has ownership, we've got land use authority, so we can see that vision come to be. We can be patient and make sure that what we've heard from the public is realized. It also allows the people in the state to share in the increased value of the property. So as the property values rise, which we expect they will do, the lease payments go up, and so the public shares in that increase. It also gives some flexibility, I think, over time, so that at the right time the state can sell property. And I think that'll happen earlier than expected because we want some for-sale housing to be part of this project. So it's a balance between having the ability to deliver on the vision, but at the same time wanting to get the state out of the role of developer and get it into the private sector.
What kind of housing will be in there?
It'll be a range of things. There will be, for rent, for sale. There will be apartments, condos, townhomes. Probably see some single family that'll go in as well. Part of the idea is, and in fact, this is in statute. The legislature wants us to find a balance between jobs and housing in the area. And we want workforce housing, meaning housing that will meet the needs of the people that will work there, because that generates less traffic, less air pollution, et cetera. So we've deliberately looked at what we think the range of income will be and tried to have a range of housing that generally meets that.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Like what type of housing will be in there, and it kind of depends on what type of companies will be there, right?
It does, and we're not directing everything. The private sector, the developers, will bring proposals in based on what people want, and that, to as great an extent as anything, will determine what's there.
What do you think? How long is this going to take? What do you like? I'm sure you get this question all the time, and it's probably a little fuzzy on how long it's going to take. But how long do you think until it's like kind of matching the vision you just described?
Well, it is a good question and hard to determine. So much depends on the market, and right now the market's tough. But we think that first phase, which is going to be mixed use, it'll have about 3,300 housing units, 3,000 or 3 million square feet of office. It'll have extensive retail, et cetera. We think that's probably a 10 to 15 year build out. That doesn't mean that we're not going to do other things until that's done. We fully expect that there will be, say, a corporate campus that'll want to come in and pick a spot on the site, and that we'll start future phases before phase one is complete. So full build out, 25, 30 years maybe. I'll just say our marching orders are to do it right more than to do it fast.
Yeah. That's kind of cool to be working on something that's like 25-year project. That's pretty fun.
It is kind of fun to think out in the future. And we've got to think out in the future and say, what is it going to be like then? Not just what do we need today? So just as an example, we have an RFP out for a group to help us think through vertiports at the site, places where air taxis can land. And why are we doing that so early? It's because as we plan the buildings, we want to make sure that we're not blocking potential landing zones. We've got to look at other constraints that are in there. How does it fit with a broader regional system? So it's really to help us ensure that we don't do anything today that prevents the opportunity in the future.
Yeah.
How different would Lehigh be if you had been able to plan it? You don't have to answer that. But Lehigh is kind of a mess.
We love Lehigh as our good neighbors and want them to succeed in every way.
We love Lehigh too. We're obviously there.
Yeah. The roads, the key roads that connect are obviously like I-15 and 100 and Bangor Highway, those. But then to the west, there's some other outlets, right, that are not as well known.
Yeah. So, not shockingly, when they built the prison, they were not thinking about access.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we've got to overcome and make sure that people can get in and out of the site easily. So we've worked with some international experts to develop a mobility strategy that reduces traffic generation to model levels as good as any place in the world. And there are a number of features in that. Part of it is transit. So there will be a front runner stop at the site so people throughout the Wasatch Front can get there. Light rail that'll go through the site into Utah County. That makes a big difference. Internal circulators, so once people are there, they can get around easily to any spot on the site. Roads are a big deal too. And so the first major road that'll go in is Porter Rockwell Boulevard, extending from 146 South to Bangor Highway. UDOT's working very hard on I-15 and creating frontage roads and off-ramps and ramps that'll go over I-15 and into Draper that'll create some additional connections. And then we'll have some additional roads that'll go down to 146 South. So the idea is that it's got to be connected. It'll have a grid system internally to facilitate traffic flow. But all of those things together, including mobility hubs for e-bikes, et cetera, will reduce traffic generation by about 30%, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Does Porter Rockwell Boulevard currently exist, or is that new?
Oh, it exists.
Oh, it does?
It exists to the south.
I love it.
You've been on it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's so cool.
That's
Probably
the road
not.
out to the Warriors, like Zans Bank. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
A part that I like is that you guys are also environmentally conscious, because that was a ton of concrete and rebar. And
Mm-hmm.
was there any asbestos? And
Yes.
Yeah.
There was asbestos, all remediated. But, we're talking about the demolition.
demolition? Yeah.
So first of all, yes, sustainability is a big piece. We heard that loud and clear from people. And we wanted to start modeling the sustainability with the demolition. So last I heard, 76% of the materials that were on the site with the prison have been recycled. So rebar, steel, et cetera, all went to metal recycling. The asphalt was ground up. It'll be used in some of the roads. All of the concrete, it's a huge amount of concrete, has been ground up on the site. You'll see those mountains of crushed concrete on the site. That'll be used for road base and foundations and other things. Saved over 8,000 heavy truck trips. So you think of the noise, the impact on roads, the air quality impacts, et cetera, that were all eliminated by doing this on site.
Yeah. And it saved a bunch of money probably in the end too, right?
Saved some money, yeah,
Yeah.
it did, and it'll carry forth. So as we plan this, we're going to use much less water than a typical development would. Low water use planning, appliances that are low water use. We'll, again, try to get people so that they have a range of transportation options so they don't all have to take single-person trips. And all of those things make a difference.
Yeah. Even if those didn't exist, obviously they will, it's going to be walkable, right? Like you can walk in San Francisco and Manhattan, get some exercise, and you plan it ahead, but you can walk 600 acres or 300 acres or a mile pretty easily. So I would anticipate a lot of people are going to walk.
We hope so. We want it to be a place where people are out getting exercise, where health is a big part of it. We're meeting your neighbors and interacting matters.
Yeah.
So there will be gathering places and programming on the site where you can go and listen to a street performer. Public art will be throughout the site to just generate thought and conversation.
Yeah.
We think all of that's important for creating a real sense of community.
Yeah. The sense of community is interesting because, like, if you guys were doing this in 1950, you would have some examples, maybe Brasilia or some others throughout the world. But an interesting example comes to my mind is Los Alamos. It was a secret project, heavy-handed, but it's really interesting as they built that city and the testing sites and like the big boy, big girl scientific stuff. They'd bring these world-renowned physicists and chemists, but they had wives and kids, and they'd be, where's the laundry service, and where's the convention hall? Where do we go for music? Where do we go for schools? And J. Robert Oppenheimer and Groves are like, we're trying to do something a bit bigger here, and they're like, well, we need it. And then the scientists would be like, yeah, I need it because I don't want to come home to an angry family. And it was really interesting how they built that, in 2 years. Unlimited funding, but it doesn't ever change, right? Like you guys are going to deal with a lot of those same issues.
Are you developing a nuclear bomb too?
Let me go firmly on record that we are not. And but your point is so well taken. If you're creating a community, it has to work for people and for families and people of all ages. And so, just as an example, schools. We're working very closely with the Canyon School District and have some really exciting ideas for public education there, including an innovation high school that will be, I think, national class. They've gone and traveled around the country and picked out some ideas and concepts from other states and bringing it back here to a place where students locally or remotely around the state can participate, where they'll have a robotics class or an AI class or tech class or entrepreneurship class, and students can go through and have experiential learning. Their graduation will be based on producing things, not just passing tests, a real partnership with higher education and with industry. And would love to see, the members of Silicon Slopes get actively involved in internships, mentoring, after-school programs, and really taking this to new heights we haven't seen before.
Yeah. I jokingly started this by asking about the pro teams, the professional sports teams going there. But is there concern, and I'm sure Salt Lake City is concerned, like that you were about to build another capital city is kind of, I imagine, what Salt Lake City is concerned about. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is not going to replace our capital city. It can't and shouldn't. But it will be, we want our capital city to thrive. But the trends are that the exurbs, the suburban areas, the edge cities are growing. There's a lot of growth down in the south part of Salt Lake County and the north part of Utah County that isn't fully served right now. This provides some services that are needed in the subregion. We think it'll complement other development and should. Growth's coming.
Yeah.
And you can accommodate it in different ways. And we've seen what other regions have done as they spread out and made the place unlivable. Here we've got a chance to do it right, where we're not going to solve all problems on 600 acres.
Yeah.
But we can provide a model for how we can grow thoughtfully and at least give people a choice. They can live wherever they want, however they want, but at least provide a choice that maybe hasn't been as prevalent before.
Some of this is already happening too. I mean, most tech communities, the heart of it, are in the capital city. And that's not true in Utah, right? And that's probably lifestyle. That's probably geography, trying to pull talent from Provo and Salt Lake City. That's probably a lot of different things, but it is right where you're building is the heart of the tech community, which is interesting and kind of a fascinating challenge because it's not the capital city. Salt Lake City is not the hub of the tech community, although there's plenty of incredible tech talent and tech companies there. The hub is in the middle, in between Provo and Salt Lake City, which makes Utah rather unique. And it's probably what makes this development so unique is like, man, you're going in like the heart of this thing. Like that is the heart of the innovation.
Yeah, you're right. It's a big part of it. Big part of it to be right in the heart of Silicon Slopes and to be able to, again, attract talent, to help Utah companies continue to grow and succeed. And maybe bring in some new opportunities that haven't looked at Utah before.
Yeah. There's another major development happening in Utah City. I don't know how far along that is. I think you guys are further along than Utah City, but what are your thoughts on that? That's another, I've heard, concern. Like, are they trying to build another capital city in Utah County?
Yeah, well, again, I think that these can be complementary.
I do too, yeah.
They're looking at a place that's walkable, that's meeting the market needs of people that want to live in that type of community. And I think that we can all learn from each other. Again, the growth is coming. Let's deal with it in a thoughtful way rather than just, let me put it this way. There are a lot of people that you'll hear over and over again say, what's the state doing? Why doesn't it stop growth? Well, I don't know how in the world you do that,
Impossible.
Except that there are some communities that have succeeded at stopping growth, and Detroit's one of them. If you make it a place where people don't want to be, they'll stop coming. And that's not a strategy that we want to follow here. So as long as you've got a great quality of life and a hot economy, it's going to attract people. I'm concerned about the growth as much as anybody, but again, the better approach in my mind is to have these kinds of communities that give people choices and accommodate it in ways that generate less traffic, fewer emissions, use less water, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to just live in Montana on a ranch and not see anybody, right? But like here, and that's probably what Utah used to be, and a lot of these old timers prefer, and they're not wrong.
They're not wrong.
They're not wrong at all.
No, that's one of the reasons I came here. I loved outdoors, the fishing, the hiking, et cetera, and I'm concerned about the growth as much as anyone.
Yeah, but the challenge is so much of the growth is internal, and if you stick your head in the sand, you do end up like something like Detroit, or even like what's happening in San Francisco, where they did not plan for how incredible Silicon Valley would be and how that would transform that whole area to the point where it becomes kind of nuts. So you gotta at least be thinking about it. I love that the state is thinking about this, that we have somebody like you looking at it, planning, and trying to do it the right way, because the option that's not on the table is stopping growth. That's not actually possible.
Yeah.
It's really not possible.
Well, we know places that have tried it with growth boundaries and those kinds of things, and all it does is get people to leap over those boundaries and spread out further, or increases the cost of housing to a point where kids can't stay there. And I think many of us want this to be a place where families can stay together, where our kids can have the option of being close. I'm worried about the cost of housing.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a son and daughter-in-law who are getting started, have graduated. They don't have prospects for getting a home anytime soon, and that worries me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I would imagine there's a lot of folks that want their kids to be, within 30 miles, that'll be buying, the condos or the small town homes, just as this is the best solution for us. I've got a lot of anecdotal evidence of that. I live in, Holiday, but I don't want my kids to live in Syracuse. So I think that'll be good economic stimulus for this project. A bunch of baby boomers buying their second home there.
Well, think about like a starter home. Like, I'm 38 years old. Our starter home that we bought was $140,000. Try doing that now.
No.
Like, again, I'm not old. I'm older, but I'm not, like, I'm 38 years old. Our starter home was $140,000.
Yeah.
Now I think it's about $500,000. You got to be about 4 to 500,000.
That's a lot of
for
money.
that same thing. That is crazy.
it is.
Big mortgage.
That's so absurd. How could anybody do that? There's no way I could have done that.
No.
By the way, wages haven't adjusted to that. Like it's impossible.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It is. It's a threat to our state, our community.
I think
And,
it's one of our biggest issues, if not
it
the
is.
biggest. Yeah.
It is. And that's why a big piece of what we're doing is looking at affordability. Now, let's be honest. It's hard to do on some of the most expensive, valuable land in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we've created a baseline for our developers that they have to ensure that at least 12.5% of the housing is affordable based on area median income. And we are looking at ways that we can generate more of that. One of them is we went to the legislature last year and said, let us create a housing trust fund so we can put some, transient room tax, the hotel taxes, into a fund and help defray the cost of housing, not just at our site, but in surrounding communities as well. So we're doing that. We're looking at building techniques that make it a little less expensive. So it's a challenge to balance high quality, but also opportunity, and we're doing our best to do that.
I think you're doing a great job.
Weird question. So all the buildings are down. It's been remediated. It's back to pre-prison. How many billions of dollars would it take to buy that land? Is there a number? Has anyone ever had the valuation?
Can you talk about the numbers that have been offered? Is probably the other thing.
Well,
Because
yeah.
I remember there was an enormous tech company out of, is it Seattle? Where's Amazon based?
Seattle.
That said, we're going to have an HQ2 about 5 years ago. And I'm pretty sure that was offered. I don't know if you can talk about that.
I don't know that, and that preceded me, and I know that there was
I'm pretty
discussion
sure
about
that
it
was
there,
offered. And my goodness, how lucky are we that didn't happen?
Yeah.
Just one of the pieces, and at least one of the considerations, is how do you get the best return for the people of the state? And there are different ways it could be done. And a few years ago, the Gardner Policy Institute at the University of Utah did a study of projected returns for the point. We're going to have that updated soon, but they looked at two scenarios. One was, let's sell off the property to the highest bidder, and it develops consistent with what you see in the area and what's going on in the market. And the other scenario was the framework plan that we've put together. And they determined that under that baseline, at full build-out, you'd generate about 8,600 jobs at the site. Under the framework plan, 46,500 jobs.
Oh, wow.
And if you look at, just as an example, GDP, the total impact on Utah's economy, it goes from about 1.3 billion a year to over 7 billion a year. You say, how can it be that different? And the response is, you look at what's going on in that area, nothing wrong with it, but if we're bringing in companies that haven't been here before, who are innovating, if you're encouraging entrepreneurship, if we're paying higher wages, there are more taxes that are generated from that, commercialization of ideas that come out of our universities, et cetera. It just generates more economic activity.
Yeah.
So that's part of why we're heading in the direction we're heading, rather than just putting up a for sale sign now.
Yeah, that probably is a good question, though. It's got to be billions.
Well, let's say you wanted
Could be 10 billion, 20
to
billion.
build a
It's not
600-acre
that
golf
much.
course,
You don't think it's 10?
No. Well, if just for the land, no.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
because it is a bit of a math calculate. Like if the governor was the only one who had any say in it, somebody said, I want to build a 600-acre golf course. What's the price? You'd have to factor in everything that you just mentioned, forecast it out, and then put a multiple on it, right?
Yep.
And that would be the number. And it'd have to be
That's
50,
interesting.
60 billion, don't you think?
So if I look at the area there, just the land and surrounding areas and comps and things, it varies and it's changing, but roughly 1.5 million an acre and 600 acres. So you're talking
Oh,
a
okay.
little over $1 billion maybe if it were sold. Whereas
Interesting.
you
Yeah,
know,
this is
with
way better than
everything else. You're going to be generating much more economic activity.
Yeah.
Who. So I know you're in charge of this, but like, who do you report to? Is it Cox?
No, we have a board. It's the Land Authority, composed of 12 appointed members, established by statute, and it includes 4 legislators, 3 mayors, the heads of a couple of state agencies, the commissioner of higher education, private sector real estate expertise. Good people. I mean, longtime Utah residents raising their families here, really having the interests of Utah in mind. They've been created by the legislature, so the legislature gives them authority, determines what the priorities are, and is established through statute how this is proceeding. So I've got, with my board and the legislature and the governor, I think I've got 123 bosses. And they don't all see the world the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, the legislature certainly doesn't see the world the same way.
Yeah. Well, even in just this room, I think there's 2 folks that are disappointed that there's not going to be Major League sports there.
Oh, to be clear, I want it in Utah City. I want even close. I want to go even further south for the sports teams.
Yeah. But I'm gonna really enjoy, in 25 years at your retirement party to have you on again.
Yeah, see if we
See
can
how it all
actually
went.
make this happen. But that's the thing, that you can have great plans, you can talk it up, but we've got to deliver, and that's the thing that keeps me up at night. It's the thing that drives all of us that are involved. I will not say that we've got the answers. We've got great consultants, great public input. I think we're heading in a good direction, but we're going to have to continue to dog this thing and make sure that we've got good advice and we're reevaluating as the market changes. And again, absolutely driven by the notion of making life better for people, not just today, but in generations to come.
Yeah.
I will say they picked the exact right man for the job.
You're too
So
kind.
really, I'm really thankful that you're doing that, and you could have done a lot of things given your experience, and so the fact that you're spending so much time on and devoting so much of your career to this is incredible. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. It wouldn't happen without a lot of really good, dedicated people that are helping.
Yeah, we're lucky we got you though.
Well, thanks.
Hey, who do we have? Who do we have tomorrow? Dan Lambert, GM of Technology at Sonic Healthcare.
Yes, sir.
Very cool. There's going to be a verdict today.
We're not breaking it, apparently.
I
Run out of
haven't
time.
even looked at anything. So who knows? Who cares? All right, we'll see everybody tomorrow.